Oh, Florida, where would I be without your, everything? Hello there, people of the internet. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing alright, thanks for asking. I have been dealing with a lot of nonsense today whenever it comes to Florida, and this right here is not the first take where I've tried making this video. Okay, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Whenever I talk about these particular firearms, I'll talk about old school milsurp firearms like this. This right here is a Yugo 2447, but insert your choice of old school military surplus bolt action rifle here. And I'll talk about their obsolescence in modern day, especially whenever I am comparing them to modern counterparts of what they might potentially come up against. Or maybe if I'm just talking about modern technologies and different alternatives to these old school milsurps, and I'll have a bunch of people in the comments tell me that these rifles are not obsolete because they are in fact still being used in many of your third world countries, you know, by several forces, and yeah, I guess by technical definition, in order for something to be obsolete, it has to no longer be in use. So by that definition, I guess whenever muzzle loading season comes around, that makes flintlocks, you know, not obsolete. So yeah, okay. The idea of something being obsolete, I could foresee it still being in general use in some places around the world. I could foresee that advocating to it no longer being obsolete. But whenever I talk about it no longer being antiquated, I will have people go into the comments and they'll tell me, well, it's still being used by XYZ force in XYZ part of the country or part of the world, or, you know, depending on where it is that these people are and what it is that they're talking about and what it is that I'm talking about, they'll tell me that these things are still being used. So whenever I am talking about something and its antiquated design and its inability to compete with modern day stuff, I will, like I said, have people tell me that, you know, that's not true. There's people using that to compete against the modern stuff in, you know, these other countries around the world. So whenever people tell me that, I don't think that they realize that these people are using things like this based off of the ideology of having something like this is better than nothing. Whenever I talk about things like this and compare them to the modern equivalent, I'm not comparing this to being better than nothing. There's Kevin screaming like a peacock again. But I'm not comparing this to being better than nothing. I'm comparing this to not being as good as modern technology, the modern day equivalent of what you would find. And a lot of people compare, you know, this right here to something like an AR platform, and they're like, this is more powerful. Well, semi-automatic, more powerful rifle exists as well. Get yourself an AR-10 or something like that, chambered in .308, and you got yourself a pretty gosh darn powerful rifle that has all of the perks of the modern equivalent without any of the drawbacks of your old school bolt action rifles. And with modern machining and modern technology and whatnot, your modern semi-automatics are going to be as accurate, if not more accurate, than your old school milsurp rifles. So that is also not an argument that people can make. But the people that go into the comments and they'll say, hey, these rifles are still, I got more than just the Yugo, I also got a Mosin out here. These rifles are still being used and, you know, being used effectively against people with modern firearms. And yeah, I mean, if you have yourself, let's say, a sniper at 300, 400, 500, maybe 600 yards, you're not really going to be all that accurate out beyond that if you're just rocking iron sights going at somebody who is camouflaged and just a man-sized target. You might be able to hit them if you have a particularly accurate, you know, military surplus rifle, but for the most part, most of your military surplus rifles that were being issued, unless we're talking, you know, ones that were specifically designed to be more accurate than the others, or ones that were pulled from production to be used for sniper purposes, your average conscript soldier's rifle is going to have roughly a 3 MOA system on it, and at, you know, 500 yards or so, that 3 MOA is going to stack up to be quite a spread. So they don't really serve all that well as sniper rifles, especially whenever you compare them to their modern counterparts. You get yourself a decent quality modern AR-10, and at the 500 yards that you'd be shooting with this thing, you'd be able to make your shots with the AR-10, which is oftentimes going to be more accurate than your old school milsurp rifles, especially in the areas that people are talking about. If we go over to Afghanistan, where people tell me all the time, hey, these are still being used by those people over there very effectively. Well, those old rifles that are still being used over there have been used very hard and very rigorously for the past 100 years or so. And as a result, their accuracy, which was already not great to begin with, has likely diminished significantly, especially considering the click-bang hang-fire ammunition that they are potentially using over there with the surplus ammo that they have with their surplus rifle. It's probably not going to lead to all that great of accuracy, especially because mass-produced ammunition during wartime for the average conscripted soldier, like your non-sniper grade ammunition, was typically not that accurate either. There is a reason why when somebody over there has a rifle like this and they find a chance to get a better, more modern design, they will leave this thing in the sand and they will pick up that better, more modern design and use that against whatever forces it is that they're going up against. And whenever people tell me, and I do hear this all the time, they use these and they use these very effectively. If we had 10 dudes using these right here, like 10 Afghanis using these right here, going up against, I don't know, 10 Marines in their full, modern day kitted sets, and how could you, I want to know how could you decide that those Afghanis with those old school Milsert bolt action rifles, if they were to go head to head against these Marines with their modern equipment, how could you decide that those guys would be able to put up much of a fight against these Marines with the modern equipment? I don't understand how people come to that conclusion. Just because these are being used and they might use them to take pot shots at people, that does not equate to these being as effective as the modern equipment. Could they still be used? Hell yeah, they could still be used. Are they better than nothing? Yes, they are better than nothing. But my God, the amount of people who put so much faith into these rifles because they are better than nothing is incredible, especially whenever I'm just talking about, using these rifles and comparing them to their modern equivalent. Not a better than nothing mindset, but a, hey, I would rather take a modern M4 than take this right here. Or, hey, I would rather take, an AR-10 or a modern M14 that has all of the bells and whistles and the rail system so I can mount, optics and flashlight, laser light grip, whatever it is that I feel like having on that thing. This way, if we are fighting at any particular distances, then, hey, guess what? I still have that achievable accuracy at these long distances, let alone having an optic on that new modern design as opposed to iron sights on something like this. It is incredible the amount of people that come into the comments talking about how, hey, these are still being used, so they must still be useful, or hey, these are oh God, hopefully you guys see my point. It's not a better than nothing mindset. It is I can understand a better than nothing mindset, and I totally get that, and we can have that at another discussion. And whenever it comes to saying, hey, these are a better than nothing system, or whenever it comes to saying, hey, there are times where these are going to be a better option than having a modern alternative, like, for example, as a survival rifle or something like that, I'd very much like a Mosin. I would enjoy a Mosin as a survival rifle. This way I can, run through my 7.62 by 54 rimmed ammo and take all the game and whatnot that I want, and I won't have to run through my defensive AR ammo or anything like that. Or, if I am going to pick like a 223 5.56 AR platform, although there are much more powerful rounds for the AR platform. Whenever I talk about the AR, people just automatically default to 223 5.56. You can shove any caliber you want into that thing to get some extremely powerful rounds out of that platform. But whenever I talk about things like that, since everyone just defaults to 223 5.56, they're like, well, if I want something more powerful, I will go with a Mosin or something like that. And I'm like, my God, why don't you throw like a 450 or something, a 450 upper onto that AR, and you will see just how powerful that AR platform can be. Or if I want to shoot long ranges, that's where I go to this thing. Well, 6.5 Grendel from an AR platform is extremely capable at some very long ranges. Or get yourself an AR-10 and 6.5 Creedmoor. My God, a 6.5 Creedmoor's ballistics would absolutely smoke both the 7.62 by 54 rimmed and the 8mm Mauser, just because that's what it is designed to do. And I'm not insulting these old school milsurps. They absolutely have their place. I mean, there's a reason why I collect these old school military surplus firearms, and I only have a couple of your modern day equivalents. However, that being said, holy Christ, the amount of people who say that these are still a viable option because they are still being used are either people who have never, actually used these for a practical purpose in, a situation where they're going up against something or somebody that potentially has some more modern equipment. Because I have, well, I don't want to justify or glorify some of the things that are going on over there in Europe, but I have literally talked to people who have had to use antiquated designs like this, and dude, they claim, these are people who are actually using these, not just me, they claim that using something like a Mosin Nagant, which is literally being used by Russian forces over there in that side of the world, or hell, even the SKS, which is currently being issued, the people that are claiming the lack of ability of these particular kinds of firearms are astronomical in comparison to the types of firearms that they're not only coming up against, but the types of firearms that they think that they should have. It really is like overwhelmingly astonishing just how many people believe that because these are still being used, and they are being used entirely out of necessity because there is nothing else for these people to use these, the people who think that these are still viable because they're still being used is absolutely amazing. There really is a legitimate reason why these are being dropped for things that are of a better, more modern design. I hear you screaming, Kevin. Where are you at, buddy? Okay, I don't see any Kevins near me, so I should be fine to keep shooting here. Let's set another round. How about we go ahead and we get ourselves, just insert a situation here where a bolt action, like literally, tell me in the comments below, give me a situation where a bolt action would be better than a semi-automatic, more modern design if we compare apples to apples and have them chambered in the same cartridge. There literally is not a better situation other than one that I can think of. If it is, Teotihuacan, if it is SHTF and the end of the world and you don't have resupply, then these right here can be valiantly ran with black powder, which can be much more easily made than smokeless powder. I got some 8mm Mauser ammunition out here as well. I may as well run through it. Let me just make sure. Yep, these are Turkish. The reason why I make sure of that is because I have some Norwegian surplus mixed in with the batch. So I just make sure that I'm shooting the Turkish stuff and not the Norwegian stuff, because that stuff is a little bit more on the rare side. And whenever I find more in the batch, then I will probably make a video specifically on that. And now I have to clean this rifle because this is corrosive ammunition. Alright, whenever people give me the idea of, hey, this is better than nothing and it's still being used, I just completely disregard those comments, because most of the time I'm not comparing these things to better than nothing. I'm comparing these to the modern counterpart, modern equivalents of what they will come across. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are below. This is kind of a controversial topic. That being said, thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check that out, and I will see you guys on the next video. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.